what's actually thick that's good for deer habitat, or what's just garbage. What do you look for? What's the difference?
One really comes into cedars, Eastern Red Cedar. And a lot of times you hear, man, that's bedding, that's cover over there. But have you ever like laid down on the ground under a cedar
all the time
when it's cold out this winter? It's cold.
This segment of DoD TV is brought to you by Leupold, American to the core.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast, powered by DeerCast. This is episode number 246. You're Matt Drury.
You're Tim Chelsvik.
We're breathless this morning. We're so excited.
Yeah.
Deer season's over, and we're thinking about like land management and getting some stuff done out on the properties.
Yeah, it's hitting real close to home for me because I got a new property to try to figure out. So this is going to be part selfish in the questions that I asked.
I got a question for a friend. Yeah, because so we'll tease this. We've got Daniel Mallette from Growing Deer TV, the brains behind the operation. A lot of people are like, Dr. Grant Woods, he's
a doctor.
He's so smart. He's a learned doctor.
Dang it, where's the sound?
But really, Daniel is the wind beneath his wings.
This is a house of learned doctors.
There you go.
Daniel probably has an honorary PhD.
It's like hanging out with like Mark and Terry, Wade and Forrest and those guys. Before long, you have like
learning by diffusion.
Yeah, 400 level, deer knowledge. So I guarantee you, it's the same for Daniel with Dr. Grant Woods
and Dr. Daniel Mallette. But before we get to Dr. Mallette, this is probably wrong. We shouldn't be assigning doctorates to people, but maybe we can. I don't know.
My initials are MD, so.
Dude, that's true.
Mark.
That's so true. You're right.
I could be a doctor. I don't know.
That's all you need, right?
College was a blur.
I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that. Well, we want to say hello to our newest Rack Pack members.
All right, so we got Keegan Lake, Vincino Honorado. Why I always gotta laugh? You could start reading these. Vince.
Well, where's the fun of that? Vinny.
Scott Smith. There's one I can pronounce. Pooley Ripaw, Jeremy Capper, Tanner Fike, and Mike Otis. I'm going with Pooley Ripaw as the fake name.
Yeah, I would guess Jeremy Capper. But maybe they're both fake.
Maybe.
Who knows? And then over on Apple Podcasts, Dr. LC, another doctor.
This is a house of learned doctors.
It really is today.
And this one believes that this is a great podcast. He says, I really enjoy listening to the podcast, especially the soundboard when the stepbrother quotes come out. Keep doing what you guys are doing and don't listen to the haters.
Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
There you go, Dr. LC. Thank you.
All right. I wonder if he's really a doctor or he just did that so I would hit the doctor, the house of learned doctors.
It could be.
That's like some meta line of thinking.
If he is a doctor, I wonder what kind of doctor he is. If you're in the Rack Pack, let us know.
I think about the Seinfeld episode where Kramer's he got the license plate. This is Aspen.
Yes.
He's
a proctologist.
So maybe for all you young guys out there listening, go to Netflix and watch some Seinfeld episodes. It'll do you well.
It's better than Grat 5.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So, Daniel, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Daniel, did Grant give you a title, or do you just kind of do everything that just needs to be done?
I wish I had a title sometimes because then I could be a little more focused. I kind of do a little bit of everything.
All other duties as assigned.
In the field, on the production side, a little bit of everything.
I'm gonna bring you in on a little secret. Tim is the editor-in-chief of DeerCast, And that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Tim does it all as well. Scott's a social media guy. That's also a farming guy. That's also a
Electrician.
carpenter, an electrician.
We bleed out.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're, in this industry, all these, companies are so small that basically you get, once you're in it for everything.
You got to do everything.
Yeah.
So,
That's part of being a great team. Just jumping in.
That's right.
yep.
Take the team.
So maybe if folks aren't familiar with Growing Deer TV, first get out from under a rock. But then, Daniel, could you explain a little bit about like the philosophy, what you guys do? Because it's hunting. It's hunting content, but I think there's kind of a deeper and a different angle that you guys take that's unique.
Yeah, our team's mission is to help others enjoy creation, and creation's not just hunting. That's one part of it. It's the habitat work. It's just getting outside on a walk. Maybe you're looking for sheds or whatnot, and just taking it all in, seeing the wonder and the beauty all around us. And that's really our mission as a team. And hunting gives us the opportunity to share a lot of lessons and to help folks along the way, wherever they are on that spectrum of hunting or land management.
This show, and it's one of the deals, like Grant was, I think, along with Bill Winke, they were probably the first two, to go and do an online show, I think, and online only, which I know you guys have expanded past that now, right? Are you doing some stuff on Pursuit or Sports?
Yeah, we're on. No, we're not on TV, but we're on the Roku and Amazon Fire and whatnot, and so different channels like that. So yeah, we've expanded Waypoint TV and whatnot. So partnered with other platforms.
But in general, you guys were kind of one of the originals out there, which a lot of, now you look at it and you do, YouTube shows. There's a bunch of content creators in our space on YouTube and doing those things. But Grant and Bill kind of paved the path. And what I like about it is it's a non-traditional way of looking at it. It's a TV show without being on TV, so there's no constraints. It's they dive into, like he said, really helping on the land management side, or kind of like how you do with the wildlife word. Grant's always going into some detail on something specific as it pertains to the wildlife in general and what
changing people's lives.
Yeah, it really does, though, in a sense, because there's so many guys like me that really don't know anything about it. And these guys are they're educated in those fields, and so bringing that information across, it's huge because they do it in a way it's very easy to digest and
practical.
Yeah, and put to use on your own property, no matter how big it is.
So Growing Deer TV is, in another way, you could say it's a lie because it's not on TV. Is that accurate, Daniel?
I guess that's one way to put it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
I was looking for the soundbite. I may not have this one. You sit on Throne of Lies. I may not have that one.
Well, and you guys have contributed to DeerCast a little bit over the fall and over the summer with some really incredible content. We did the Neonic show last spring. You were along for the ride for the Nudnik show. But if folks haven't listened to that episode, I really suggest going back and listening. I'll link it in the show notes. But just Grant was raising a caution flag about this particular seed coat and what it might be doing to turkey specifically, but wildlife in general. So that's kind of one of the really interesting things. I know that some DNRs and the Missouri Department of Conservation has taken notice also. So Dr. Woods is kind of on the bleeding edge of research and understanding kind of what's happening at the population level with turkeys. I know that's a hot button issue right now. And so when you follow Growing Deer TV, you're getting practical information, not only how to manage your property, but kind of evolving research and what's out there and what's to come. And so that's important, I think, is we always talk about hunters are such environmentalists and focus on conservation. Well, following Growing Deer TV gives you like what's coming up and how we can get involved and what's important.
Tip of the spear type stuff.
Exactly.
And Grant's so tied in to that community and researchers, and you know what I mean? So he gets kind of that first access to a lot of that information, and then kind of just disseminates it to the rest of us and dumbs it down for
Exactly.
the rest of us. So that's what I find so interesting. Have there been any updates, Daniel, on that side of things? Because it's been a few months since we talked to Grant about that topic.
Yeah, it's that video and that topic just kind of, it got out there and people were talking about it and writing emails and there was a response, and which is great. And I hope that conversation continues in different organizations, agencies and whatnot, and we can kind of all work together to start really looking at the research and really diving in and seeing what's going on out there. And neonics was kind of that topic we were looking at, that seed coating, which is kind of an insecticide that they put on seeds, and neonicotinoids. And there's research out there on some other critters. So just looking and seeing what's going on with turkeys.
Let the record show that both Matt and I pronounced neonics incorrectly.
Yeah, take that, Tim.
I will.
You nutnik.
Daniel, how did you I'm curious, how did you end up at Growing Deer TV? How did you meet Grant, and how did you end up working there full time?
Yeah, I was actually working out in Colorado with the Division of Wildlife out there, and I was doing a prairie dog research program. And I was originally from northern Missouri, and I kind of figured out prairie dogs was not the career path for me.
Really?
And so, yeah, I know it was crazy.
I heard there's a lot of money in prairie dogs, but
I know some great prairie dog hunting locations. So.
Okay.
But so kind of out of college, kind of realizing, hey, this isn't really the path I wanted to go. I want to get more in the whitetail world.
Mm-hmm.
And so just like Matt was saying, it was kind of Bill and Grant at that time on that digital platform, and I was kind of following both. And I emailed Grant while I was out in Colorado and just said, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. I'm kind of wanting to get back in the whitetail world and land management. And he said, hey, I've got a fall internship open. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, I was moving back to Missouri and started an internship with Grant in the fall. And then he hired me on after that internship program. And I've just been working through the entire, the team and different steps along the way of the habitat management and the production side, and have just kind of gone through.
Here you are.
Through everything with
And
him.
now you're on our show, which is the
This
zenith
is great.
of a career.
That's the low.
Or that.
Okay, so you talk about the habitat management side. This we talked a little bit before we started rolling. I'm fascinated by this. We get a lot of emails internally asking for help from Mark and Terry on, hey, would these guys be able to come out and look at my property and kind of give me some advice? And the reality of it is Mark and Terry they're just really busy on their own properties. Or in Dad's case, I mean, he's 65. He's nearing retirement age as far as wanting to go travel and do these types of things. He just doesn't have it in him. So anyways, I always give Grant's info out because that's what you guys actually do. So you got the growingdeer.tv side, but you also have this land management habitat side where he does consultations for landowners. So can you dive into that a little bit? I find it fascinating, and I think there's a lot of people out there that could utilize these services and help put a plan in place, because it's like having a good, with right now we're in the thick of the playoff season for football. It's having a good coach, having somebody with that big picture outlook, and then you kind of give the plan to your players and they go put it in place. Well, that's a lot of what you guys are doing. You're coming up with it. You go check out the properties, and then you put a plan in place, and then they go execute. And sometimes you guys are helping on that side too. So can you kind of take us through what exactly it is you guys do?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that illustration. I played basketball, and I saw a lot of times coaches they'd get players, right, that had bad habits, and then they'd have to try to break those habits.
Like smoking.
Well, that's a lot of times what we're doing. A lot of times is we're going to places where folks have tried and it hasn't worked, or someone else has come in and made suggestions, and they've spent all this money and the project just isn't getting anywhere. And coming in and kind of saying, hey, this is the direction we need to go to meet your specific goals. But it's so much better if there's just a clean slate and you can come in and there's no other projects going on. You can just say, hey, this is the direction you need to go right here to meet your goals. And they just save so much time and frustration and money and resources if they just kind of start fresh. And so we see two ends of the spectrum a lot of times. Most of the time, it is a property that's been high graded, or they've started putting food plots in and they've kind of made some mistakes along the way or whatnot. And so we then come in and we say, we ask them what their specific goals are. Not everyone wants to shoot a 200-inch deer, right? And for a lot of folks, that's not realistic to shoot that every year, right? Well, I wish, and it'd be great. And we got folks that want to shoot, mature deer every year, regardless of score. And then we have folks that they just want to harvest a deer to put food on the table and have that organic meat source. And so it's really understanding that person's specific goals and then bringing those tools to them and saying, hey, these are the projects that you could implement on your property to start working towards your goals. And then we prioritize them. We want them to start being successful at the beginning and then work towards those goals. Just like you would with anything else in life. You start small and it's just a habit, a lifestyle, and you build upon it to get to that end result. So that's what we do. We visit first and really understand where they want to go. And then we actually have kind of two ways we can do it. We look on maps and we'll just have an hour-long conversation with folks, and we can tell a lot from just a map. And in that situation, folks are our eyes and our boots, and they're telling us, hey, this stand of timber, it was high graded 15 years ago, and it's stem to stem, and it's just thick and nasty to get in there. There's nothing on the ground but just real thick saplings, and then we walk them through the process. Okay, look, in this stand, let's do some TSI. Let's maybe do some hack and squirt and get rid of those saplings and implement prescribed fire. And we walk them through those steps just over the phone. But it's always better to actually see the property and kind of see the value of the timber, if there is a value there, and walk those hills and those valleys, and then put that together not only as a habitat plan, but then a hunting plan. We're not just saying, oh, there's a flat ridge, put a food plot there. If you can't get there effectively without alerting deer, why would we spend those resources there? And we may, just because we may need a lot of food on that property, and that's where we need to have just food. That's limited acreage. Yeah. But a lot of times we're looking at it from that hunting perspective too. And so can we get there? Can we effectively hunt it? No, let's focus somewhere else. Let's put those resources somewhere else where we can actually hunt and tag those deer. And so that's all part of that planning and that design to then get deer within range of the hunter. and where they can see deer and whatnot.
So, in that conversation we had off air, you were saying that you guys are, it's crazy. You're booked full, or you have more bookings already this year than you did all of last year. And do you think it's, and you said that there's a lot of like small acreages, 20, 40 acres as well. I would have thought that it would have been a couple 100-acre, to 1,000 acres
You're wrong.
Big landowners would be the majority of the clientele. Do you think that this run that we've had on land in the last year or two, because I mean, all the property agencies out there, they're having record years. And do you think that run on land has created kind of a new landowner, so to speak? Like, we went through the pandemic and people are realizing, look, I got nowhere to go here. I'm living in a subdivision and I got nowhere to spread my legs and my kids to grow up. And do you think it's those kind of landowners, or like what's the kind of clientele that you're seeing?
Absolutely. We're seeing that a lot and more since the pandemic. There's people just trying to get out of the city. And then we're seeing a lot of folks, they're buying land kind of as they reach retirement and they're wanting to just start a new project. And, they're happy with a 40 or an 80 and they just want to just be out there making little hidey hole food plots and whatnot. And so, but definitely seeing more of the folks now than even, 2-3 years ago that are moving out of the city and just buying land and just wanting just to tag a deer.
Sure. I can
Which is great.
imagine.
Which is great.
Yeah. The more people that they got their own land, they're buying in and focusing on hunting. There's nothing wrong with that. I keep imagining you heading out to a property and getting there and just looking around and saying, no.
You're doing it all wrong.
Yeah. What are some of the...
We had a guy just the other day. He was looking to buy a property, and we looked at it with him on the map, and said, okay, yeah, this is a property that fits your goals, and yeah, this would be a good property to buy. A lot of times, those are the best to evaluate. I mean, if you're going to put that amount of resources in buying a property, maybe it's not even a property that's going to get to your goals.
Yeah.
And so just evaluating a property even before you buy it is a huge step in the right direction.
So you'll work with people in the buying process and help consult with them on which pieces they should purchase based on their goals.
And we'll be honest, because we don't have a dog in the fight, right? Because we'll say, hey, this isn't a property you should buy. Boy, this doesn't fit your goals.
Talk about some peace of mind. Because that's a huge thing for me, is like, oh, what if I buy it and it just turned like it's an Indian burial ground and you can't do anything with it. Like, it'd be nice to have an objective opinion on it.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, what do you see if you could think of like maybe 3 common issues that you see? Like, here's what guys tend to always do wrong. What are some of the common threads there? And don't lie.
I would timber management is really one of the big things that people do. They want to, and everyone's goals are different, right? Mm-hmm. But wildlife can be paired with production. But if you really want wildlife, you're going to manage your timber differently than if you want production. And a lot of times people want wildlife, but they're still managing that timber as they would for production timber. And so trying to, guide people through that process and what that looks like is one thing that we really see a lot. And, we see so much timber that has just been high graded. And it's very low quality.
What do you mean when you say that?
Where they've come in and, they've taken the best trees, those production trees, and they've just left low quality trees.
High graded.
And so what happens there, and there's a lot of things that go into play there. There's disturbance, when they're felling trees, the trees they're leaving, they're, a wet tree that's green and it's falling. It hits another tree, it's going to, damage it, scar it. Insects, disease can get into that tree. And so then the trees they leave aren't great trees that they aren't going forward, aren't meeting their then production or wildlife needs. And they've taken the best trees and now they've disturbed the soil and there's some sunlight reaching the ground and then it grows up and it's saplings and now it's really a mess, or there's slash on the ground and there's no prescribed fire being used and it's just grown up and timber, if it's not managed appropriately, can be a big project later down the road. So being able to go in and manage for wildlife, we have different goals than just taking the best trees. A lot of times we want to leave those good trees, remove those lower quality trees, so those best trees can then produce more timber, or you have a great hunting location that big white oak now is receiving more sunlight because there's not competition next to it for sunlight, water, nutrients, and that big white oak's now producing great tasting acorns, and a lot of acorns on the years it's producing acorns, and you just know, man, that's a killing tree. You go to that tree and there's just deer there almost every day feeding under it because now that big white oak's just loaded. So, and then with that, you've opened up the canopy and we're allowing more sunlight to reach the ground, and we've got native browse, high quality browse, growing along the ground. And that produces not only browse, but cover. So now we've got cover, we've got food, we've got trees that are receiving more sunlight, more water, nutrients. They're able to produce more wood more quickly, should the landowner want to harvest trees later down the road. So it kind of, everything works hand in hand. And that's kind of the habitat that it was, years ago. When people were coming in looking and starting to cut trees, they were cutting those virgin timbers that were those big trees because there was so much sunlight, and that's because fire was on the landscape and suppressing a lot of those lower quality trees, or trees along the ground, and the trees that were surviving were thriving.
Gotcha. Is the tension there, like when the tension between managing for wildlife versus managing for timber production, is it just because there's so much money in timber production?
There can be, but right now quality timber is hard to find. So you'd have to have a pretty good property that, really make it worth your effort and the disturbance it causes and whatnot. But really, and there's different types, right? You have your hardwoods, or you could have, maybe you got pine stands down in the south, and pines, gosh, everyone has grown pines, and the pine production, that timber market, it's tough to really make money right now because everyone's cutting and all at the same time, right? Because everyone's put pines in at the same time. So, and while we're on pines, managing pines, wildlife habitat, one thing that we've found that's really effective for both timber production and habitat is doing a fifth row thinning, and then that allows those pines to get more sunlight. But then we can plant food plots down that row, that fifth row, and there's enough sunlight there that now we can pack in and use prescribed fire. Pines have a very deep root and thick bark, so they're very fire resistant. So we can use fire in pine stands and get native vegetation underneath, and now we've got native vegetation, food plot, native vegetation, food plot, and we can pack critters in and, acreage of just quality food and habitat. We can just pack critters in, and it's great hunting too. You can just spot and stalk through rows, and it's very productive. And habitat and timber production is happening.
Here in the Midwest, what would you consider, like you said, some of the saplings or the trash kind of habitat that's there that you want to get rid of? What would qualify as trash habitat? Because I look even on like the piece that I just bought, there's plenty of, it's really thick. They did TSI maybe 5-6 years ago, it sounded like, and there's areas that are really thick, but then there's areas that it looks like you wouldn't be able to even walk through there. And then I wonder, like, okay, what's actually thick that's good for deer habitat, or what's just
garbage?
What do you look for? What's the difference?
One really comes into cedars, Eastern Red Cedar. And a lot of times you hear, man, that's bedding, that's cover over there. But have you ever like laid down on the ground under a cedar
all the time
when it's cold out this winter? It's cold down there. There's not a lot of sunlight reaching, and it's cold under a cedar. A lot of times in the Midwest, just because of our management practices, right? Cedars kind of are the best cover, and critters are going to use the best cover in the area. And it doesn't mean it's quality cover or the best cover, but in the area, that's cover. And so a lot of times you'll see deer in those cedar patches because that's the best cover for them. But it's very cold, and we can do much better getting those native grasses and forbs. We want a diversity. We want patchwork, a mosaic of species throughout the landscape. It's warm one day. They're going to want to find a little gap where maybe there were some forbs growing during the summer, and in the winter, now those forbs they've matured, and now there's a little gap. So they can lay in that little hole there when it's kind of warm and still have some cover, or maybe it's really cold. And so they're going to move over to where there's a little more native grass, where that it's shearing the wind, that's it's gathering that radiant energy from the sun, and they're going to stay a little warm. So we kind of want that patchwork. But in cedars, it's cold. The wind goes right down there. We walk through it, slaps us in the face, and we think, man, this is great cover. But you really got to look at that 0 to 3 feet where a deer's making a living, and that's and other critters. That's where you want to focus your habitat work. Is that 3 feet and below level.
You're blowing my mind on the cedar comment, because I always thought that's one thing you always hear people talk about, the bedding areas and cedar thickets, and I'm just shocked by that. But it makes a lot of sense. So what would you do then? Would you go in and cut those trees down and leave them on the ground, or take them out to a pile and burn them, or like what do you do with all that then if you were to get rid of them?
We're doing that at our place right now. We've got a crew here, and they're felling every cedar in a couple units. We have 200 acres of cut cedar from 2 years ago that's been laying on the ground drying, and we're going to be lighting a lot of fire this winter, burning those cedars, and we like to fell them. If you fell a cedar below that lowest limb, it's dead. It won't come back. If you are high and you've got a couple of limbs and you cut, it'll keep growing. But below that lowest limb, you cut, let it lay for 2 years. That way it's dry, and then you can come in with prescribed fire, and that'll consume a lot of that cedar skeleton, and now sunlight's reaching the ground. And one thing with letting them dry and laying on the ground for 2 years is that also is almost like a utilization cage, which we use in our food plots to monitor browse. But in that setting of the habitat, those native species, when you fell that cedar, now there's some sunlight growing right there. Those native species will respond just because they're now receiving sunlight. It's not a cedar it'll take up to 40% of rain. So that 40% of rain or moisture is not even reaching the ground. And so now there's sunlight reaching the ground, there's more water reaching the ground, and those native species will grow up right there. And deer don't want to just stick their head down in a felled cedar. So it almost acts like a utilization cage where those native species can start growing, create seed, mature, and now you've kind of got this seed bank going. And in most places, there's already a great native seed bank in the soil. It just needs to be released with some sunlight, fire.
So when you fell these cedars, you're talking like there might be 3 feet of stump there, 2-3 feet of stump there before the first branches?
That's fine. If there is, I'm still just cut it right, close to the ground.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to leave. You don't want to be looking at
Stump
3
field.
feet of stump out
That's
there.
what I was wondering. Okay.
But some cedars, even the small ones, you're going fast or whatnot, and you hit it, and there's a really low limb. It's still going to keep going if there's that low limb there.
If you were good
And
at the
another
chainsaw,
thing,
you could cut
waiting
like
the
a
2
bear
years.
into it.
Another thing, waiting for that 2 years, is you may miss some of those smaller cedars, or there may be another cedar that comes up. When you hit it with that fire will terminate those really small cedars.
Sweet. It's cold under cedars for thermal cover. It's also extremely lonely under a cedar.
Depressing.
Yes.
Most importantly.
Exactly. I got stories.
And it's very easy for predators to visually scan through cedars. You got deer laying under cedars. Coyote can weave through there and they can scan pretty easily while using the wind and whatnot. But visually, it's usually very bare under cedars. You can see quite a ways, so it's easy for predators to make a living too.
So would you, if there's a cedar thicket on your property, you would go in and cut those trees down, huh?
It's we go back to meeting the specific goals and whatnot, but a lot of times, yeah, you can get much better habitat than cedars.
Man,
And a lot of times, and we go back to that hunting. How's that paired to hunting? Well, if you got a block of cedars on your 80 and it butts up next to your buddy who's, he likes to hunt and he kind of knows what you're doing in there, we may fell all those cedars but leave a buffer right next to that property line so no one can look in, and maybe you've got a food plot in there and whatnot, or you've got native habitat, but you use those cedars as a buffer right along the property line. So yeah, you kind of design it to fit your goals.
Scott just walked past here, and Scott helps me out on the farms and amongst a billion other things, and he's been telling me that we need to cut these cedars down. So he walked by just like very vindicated.
You guys are gonna be doing some cutting and burning pretty soon.
Yeah. So we got a lot of projects to do.
No doubt.
Is there a time? So you said you guys are doing that right now. Is there a better time of the year? This is the best time of year to go in and cut down cedars, or is there a better time, or is there a couple month time frame there that you're looking at?
And you can cut cedars anytime. Right now is a very pleasant time to be in the woods, rather than you cutting cedars is hard work, and it's itchy, and you're going to work up a sweat for sure. So a lot of times right now is a great time. You kind of post hunting season, and you're getting in there and doing some habitat work, but you could cut cedars year round.
The first Christmas that my wife and I were together, I went out in the woods with our chocolate lab with my saw, and I found we had no pine trees around, so I cut a big Eastern red cedar. And by the time I got done putting the garland on it, my forearms were like all red and like puffy, and It was a huge
Great experience.
I saved like $30 on not having to buy a Christmas tree that year.
Sounds about right.
It was also huge. The scale outside doesn't quite. It's not relevant to indoors, and had to chop it down
Not
a little
going
bit.
in our house, Russ. It's going in our living room.
It was probably 12 feet when I got back to the house. I was like, I should probably chop this thing off a little bit. They don't make great Christmas trees. If there's anything people take away from this episode, don't use a red cedar as a Christmas tree.
Good to know.
Yep. Should we help our buddy Vinny with the question of the day?
Oh, Vinny. Let's do it. The question of the day is probably brought to you by Cold Steel, professional blades for real hunters.
Yeah, here's my question of the day. When you guys take somebody hunting with you, do you find that there's extra pressure for them to kill a deer because of who you guys are?
Wow.
I think I explained it pretty good, and I think you understand.
It sounds pretty threatening.
I think there would be extra pressure. People would be expecting more out of you guys because of who you are.
Well,
So that's my question of the day.
All right, Vinny, thank
I
you.
hope I'm famous.
Oh.
Not really.
you're famous now, Vinny.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. It depends who
Is
you
Vinny
are.
on the line?
God dang. Vinny never stops. Gives you enough pauses, you think he's done. So I would say if you're going to hunt
good.
with Tim or Matt, your expectations should be low going into it. Because my expectations are low that I'm going to get you on a tier.
Yeah.
I can't get on a tier. How am I going to get you on a tier? Now, if you're going with Dr. Grant or you're going with Mark or Terry, maybe the expectations that you have going in are, I'm going to see a 200-inch deer.
Yes.
And I mean, I could speak for Terry. Like, he took grandma hunting 3 or 4 times this year, and they never did kill a buck. And she could have killed anything she wanted. It's not for, like he was saying, oh, you can't
If it's
shoot
3,
this
let it be.
2-year-old. He said there was no restrictions.
Yeah.
She could have killed whatever she wanted, and they never did get on a deer. So she killed several does.
Which is why
but
Mark is her favorite son.
That's exactly right. She kept referencing that. Maybe we should go back to Mark's.
No, it's cool, Mom. We'll get it figured out.
Yeah. So I'd say Mark is basically like an outfitter. I mean, the guy is so dialed in.
Yeah.
His expectations are if he has a guest in, they're going to kill a deer, and he's that good and he's that dialed in that that's pretty much how it always plays out.
Yeah.
You go to Terry's, most of the time they kill something, but you never know. You come to Matt or Tim. I mean, you're going down this.
You
hill.
might get hurt on one of our hunts.
Well, yeah, that's right. Like, you never know. Like last year, I took my, I guess it would be 2 falls ago now. I took my nephew Nolan. He was home for the Air Force, and for Christmas, he had 1 day to hunt, and he came to hunt with me, and we killed the deer that,
You're like, that's how you do it, folks.
We could do no wrong that year. If he would have hunted with me this year, it would
Different
have been
story.
It would have been ugly, to be honest.
And there is at least on my part, there is a perceived amount of pressure because time is valuable.
Yeah.
And so someone is taking time to come hunt with you. And so, I mean, even if I normally don't have a camera guy, but especially when I have a camera guy with me, I feel like I need to have a really good chance of killing a deer here because I don't want to waste their time, let alone someone that comes to hunt with me.
Well, we had Nathan Davis come hunt with Scott and I this year, and he had reached out to me, and he was from my hometown, and I told him right out of the gate, I said, now listen, your expectations of killing a buck, because he said, I just haven't ever killed a really, really good one. I want to kill a good buck. I'm like, well.
I'm a Drury, not the Drury.
That's basically what I said. I'm like, you got to bring your expectations down to the basement cellar level, and I will do my best, but I can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
I even said, I'm like, I have a hard enough time killing a deer. Like, I would love nothing more for you to kill the best buck on the property. But if we saw a buck, I would be shocked. So I don't know, Daniel. You guys do you guys take many people hunting? I'm sure you get requests all the time, but I know that Dr. Grant's daughter hunts with you all a lot. And are there any guests that aren't part of the camper family that you take hunting?
we're in the same boat. Man, we have such a hard time even seeing deer here in southern Missouri. It's so difficult just for Grant, myself, his daughters, just to see a deer, get on a deer. It's very difficult. We stay busy. It takes us the entire season to maybe see a deer. So, man, for us, it's taking someone. Yeah, there would be a lot of pressure, not on us, but just saying, hey, this is a typical hunt in the Ozarks. We didn't see anything.
You will see some squirrels.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure's just making sure they understand, like, this is a mountain Ozark hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you do it professionally doesn't mean that there's a deer around every corner.
No. And in some cases for us, I mean, it deer learn very quickly where hunters are. And taking someone hunting, they come, if you bring someone, they're here for a day, a specific day or two, and the conditions aren't right to hunt those spots where the deer are, right? And so you're like, well, we can't go where the deer are because the conditions aren't right to get in there. So yeah, we have to just be very limited on our access and where we're hunting, and always trying to think about the next hunt too, and who's going to be hunting next. And so yeah, it's a lot of work just to see a deer for sure.
When my friends Chance and Melissa came up to hunt with me back in October, Chance was like, "Oh, I hope I don't kill the safe buck this morning." I was like, "You're not on the property where the safe buck is, brother, so there's no chance of that happening."
Pretty safe, but you're not gonna.
Yes. If you see him, shoot him. I don't care. You won't.
Joke's on you, Chance.
Sucker.
Now, that being said, you did do something Chance, who's an outfitter, was unable to do in 20 years, was it?
Yeah. And, I mean, and that happened within like the first 45 minutes of the sit. So
Boom.
Melissa killing her buck. It's like, yep, that's how you do it. Just act like you've been there before, Tim. Just be cool about it. Don't act surprised.
Holy cow.
What?
I can't believe
I
this.
didn't know there were any deer out here. Holy cats. Oh yeah. Well, let's roll into the wildlife word. It is brought to you by Tracker Off-Road. The rugged power to get the job done. It's about coyotes. Coyotes have been known to mate with domestic dogs, creating what's known as coy dogs. But what other species are they known to mate with?
You sure it's coy dogs? Should it be kai dogs?
No.
Okay, move on.
Is it A, lake sturgeon, B, blue jays, C, black rat snakes, or D, wolves? What other species are they likely to mate with?
I would have put cats in there.
That's disgusting.
Okay.
Why would you say that?
Cats and dogs.
Jeez. Marrying each other.
Isn't it like
That's
the third-
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. It's a good one.
It is.
All right. So we always let the guests go first. This one's should be a gimme. If you don't get this right, I'm telling Grant.
I'm going to say wolves.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. Wolves.
I don't know. Lake sturgeon
That'd be tough.
would be pretty fetching. But you guys are right. Yes, it is wolves. Referred to as coy wolves when it happens.
Seriously?
For reals.
So how often does that? I mean,
13 times a year.
okay.
I don't know.
I mean,
But it can happen.
all right.
So, coy dogs and coy wolves. I mean, it's 2022. There's no rules anymore.
No. I wonder if they call themselves they.
What is your pronoun? Jeez. Oh, we live in a crazy world.
You guys are probably doing a lot of predator hunting right now, aren't you?
A lot of trapping.
Trapping. Okay.
Folks, and we got a few days left. I think we're up to 97 predators.
Oh, my.
Wait, on one property?
Yep.
Holy crap.
You ever catch a
So-
guy with a like a pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade?
It's
Not yet.
Okay, that's
Not
good.
yet.
Tim,
Sorry.
we were doing so well.
Sorry, I'm trying to be better in 2022.
Failing.
It's early in the year. I got time. That's a lot. Like, so you've got pelts behind you right there in the room. Like, is there any value to pelts right now?
It's low. Gosh, a really good raccoon. We looked it up the other day. Maybe $2.50.
Oh my
Jeez.
goodness.
I'll give you 3.
The fur market is not great right
Damn
now,
PETA.
and
It is.
that has a lot of rippling effect throughout the wildlife management part.
Yeah.
And as wildlife managers, trapping, man, it is a great tool, and unfortunately throughout the entire landscape, there's not a lot of trappers anymore because they can't pay for fuel and their expenses, and it's up to us wildlife managers to trap and not only we're not gonna remove every predator off the landscape. It's not that, man, we hate predators. We want to not see them at all.
It's not vindictive.
That's not it. We want a balance, and a balance of prey, a balance of predators, and right now we're seeing an imbalance, a lot of predators, and that's affecting our prey species in a lot of ways. Our songbirds, quail, pheasant, and even turkeys, and that's not only predators but habitat loss, and there's a lot of factors there. But as wildlife managers, we're trying to improve the habitat, and we have to use trapping as a tool. So we do that as much as we can.
It's bad when I live in a residential neighborhood, and I have a little sliver of common ground, like trash timber behind
Must
me.
be rich.
Yeah, and it's common ground. It's not Matt's ground. So, anyways, the other day we have a neighborhood. I don't know if I told the story or not. We have a neighborhood Facebook page, and
You must be rich.
No, you don't want to be on that page. Let me tell you.
I'm sure it's just a bunch of griping.
It's brutal. A lot of people with a lot of time on their hands.
Apparently.
Anyways, so a lady's like, hey, just a heads up. This is broad daylight. This is probably 2 o'clock, lunch, 2 o'clock, somewhere in there. She's like, hey, watch out. There's 2 coyotes running down the street through the neighborhood. They all these people have little dogs and, stuff like that. And so they're like, watch out for your pets. And I thought, there's no way, because one time a neighbor of mine put on the Facebook page, there was a wolf. She saw a wolf, and it was a fox. She saw a wolf. And,
same thing.
So I'm like, all right, I wonder what's actually running down the 2, German shepherds.
It's a Walmart bag.
So, anyways, so my wife went out on the back deck, and she looked back in the kitchen. She goes, come out here. So I go out there. Sure shit, they're standing there underneath this. There's a big treehouse that the neighbor kids put up in this common ground. They're standing under it. It's like 20 feet from my deck. And one is like a big female. The other one looked a little ratty. And I was like, holy crap. So I go out on the deck. Of course, you can't shoot them. You know.
Sure.
What I wanted to go on the Facebook page and say is like, I could take care of this if you guys want me to, but there's going to be a couple gunshots.
Shots fired.
And so obviously you can't do any of that. So I go out there and I'm just like, hey, because they're heading, I live right next to Justin Lurk. He's right
Never
next
heard
to
of
him. And so anyways, they got a small dog. So these coyotes were headed right to his house. And so anyways, I was like, well, I'm going to spook them back into the timber. And I go down there and I start yelling at them. And they look at me like, screw you, buddy.
Just like your kids.
They're domesticated coyotes.
They don't care.
They do not care about human intrusion. Like I think about any time I've ever seen a coyote in the woods, like they fly out of there. You can't get a shot off hardly. If you're bow hunting and one walks up and you're trying to get a shot off, it's just crazy how their senses are. These two, they looked at me and they just kind of like slowly turned around and trotted off, like looking back, like
derisively.
We'll be back. Douchebag.
Yeah. Well,
I was like, holy cow.
And that is a major problem across the U.S. I mean, there are coyotes that live in metropolitan areas. They're just so adaptable.
Yeah.
And they're almost like deer in that they can adapt to human presence.
Yeah.
It's becoming an issue.
Yeah.
For sure. We should also mention, like, trapping. St. Louis would not be here if it weren't for trapping. St. Louis, the city, was almost literally built on the trapping industry.
Yeah. The gateway to the West.
Thank you. This is really a historical show.
Little known fact, St. Genevieve, where we grew up, it's the oldest settlement west of the Mississippi, Tim.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I did know that it's named after a female saint, because anytime there's an E after the S-T-E indicates that it's a feminine saint.
I did not know that.
So there you go.
It's a French settlement.
We should stop trying to one-up each other because we're quickly going to run out of facts.
I am out right now.
I'm done too. Daniel, if folks want to follow Growing Deer TV, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We produce a show every Monday, every week out of the year, and depending on our what we have coming down the pipe on content, we may do a bonus episode midweek, and then we're of course posting on social media current stuff, what we're seeing in the field, what we've trapped that day, or the bait we're using on the trap line to catch critters. So we kind of share those daily updates there as well, or they just Google growingdeer.tv and it'll come up. This is our 12th year. I think we're like on episode 679.
Nice.
680 this week.
So it's not a flash in the pan.
These guys are here to stay.
One of the things I really appreciate about your guys' videos is I never quite know what I'm going to get. It could be something habitat. It could be hunting. It could be deer biology. You guys did a great video on shot. Grant looked at, I think maybe you both looked at shot placement on a deer with its head down feeding or up and alert. And I was like, my goodness, this is just, I wouldn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
So just the perspectives that you guys have are really interesting.
Spoiler alert. Don't shoot at one with the head down.
Yeah. I would not have guessed that.
That was the theme of it, right? If I remember the video.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Basically, they're like loaded springs, their legs. And they're getting the heck out of it.
Yeah, which is counterintuitive.
And there's a lot of factors at play, but yeah, just when you look at all the past footage of, deer reacting and whatnot, it's those deer with their heads down, it's almost, they can't move faster than the speed of gravity, but it's almost as they bring their head up, they can almost like leverage their shoulders a little more. And so, they can drop a lot quicker. When you look on camera, you can see how much a deer can react and how quickly. In the moment we shoot, our eyes just can't take it in. And a lot of times we shoot right over their back and the deer reacted and we go, what happened? Oh, I missed. And man, your shot could have been great, but that deer just reacted, and you just can't take that in the moment a lot of times.
I think Grant's exact words were, dropped it like it's hot.
All right.
Daniel, thanks for hopping on and putting up with us, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in for another fantastic edition of 100% Wild Podcast.
Even you can't bring yourself to say it.
Yeah, well, listen, if you like the show, we need you to subscribe. We need you to leave a favorable rating.
Yeah.
That helps.
We love 5 stars. 5 stars to maybe get your red on the air. Become famous like Vinny.
Huge.
Vinny, prepare for a totally different lifestyle, brother.
Yeah, you're about to get famous.
You're balling, as they say on the streets.
Wanna be a baller, shakala. Tim has no idea. He's an old school.
Is that a rap song?
Yeah.
I love rap songs.
Lil Troy.
Huh. All them rappers got Lil names. Lil Curtis.
Lil Curtis. I talked to Lil Curtis on the phone yesterday, 2 days ago. Yeah. Trying to schedule something, have Lil Curtis come in.
Oh,
Gotta do big things, Lil Curse. All right, we should leave. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Till next time. Peace out. Temperatures are going to be dropping. Perfect conditions for the skinny field. Got to focus on those afternoon hunts. Northwest Tree Stand, 5 p.m.
It's the easiest decision you'll make this season. Get ahead of your game with DeerCast.
That's why Grant had you do the show. He had better things to do.
Grant, they told us that our entire show is a lie because it's not on TV. Can you believe that?
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's.